Uh, okay. Yeah. Welcome back to the S3 Magazine podcast. We are three dudes. I am Jonathan Woolley, the attractive one with the dreads. The guy with pink eye over there is Mike Sanders. and, and the guy in the colored sweatshirt with the
Oh
bang
my
leg,
God.
pirate leg, that's Ben Battles.
You
Time
can't
out.
say that. Within 30 seconds, we'll get demonetized.
If everybody can see this, it is gross, but it's not pink eye. I had a freaking something went in my eye yesterday. Screwed my
Pine
whole.
straw.
Anyway, thanks for calling that out, Wooly. Really appreciate it.
We'll call it pine straw. That's what went in your eye.
I just hate
Anyway,
it so much.
if you can't tell by our slap happy nature, we just got back from Vegas and the 2023 SEMA Show. So we're here to kind of recap it and talk about it from, I guess, three different perspectives. Me and Mike's perspective are probably going to be pretty close to the same. Ben, how long have you been going to SEMA? How many years now?
This is my third year in a row that I've been to SEMA, so like 3 years.
That's cute. We've been going for like 18. So so our views are going to be different, but I think that there's a value in this because, we're going to be jaded to some things that you're going to, love and be fresh on. And you're probably going to be like super excited about some things that, we probably know better. Right. So like, that's kind of the point. I don't know how do we want to officially open this up? Mike?
Yeah.
2023 SEMA. We were kind of going into this one a little unsure of ourselves because while we've been for 18 years, this year was different because we didn't have a magazine. So what did you think going into that? And kind of what are your quick vibes?
Quick vibes. I will say in different ways, the show was better and worse than I thought it was going to be. The economy is bad. There's no way around that. Business all around. You see everybody pulling back on budgets. You heard of big manufacturers, stepping away from SEMA like Stellantis did, like literally a week before the show. You knew the wheel and tire haul has been getting worse and worse every year. And CC, as Wooly was saying, we look at it differently. Like Ben, I know you focus a lot more on the builds and the cars and just the influencers and people. I see more of like the business side of it. And that's only because that's the main reason I go to SEMA, because I'm normally just running from meeting to meeting the entire time. I block out the noise. I don't even see the freaking cars half the time, right? So I'm just there to let's face it, man, that's where S3 makes all of its money throughout the entire year, is pretty much at that week of money. It's like Monopoly money these days with the way that people are rolling out their marketing budgets. Anyway, I thought some parts of SEMA were really, really good. The 4x4 haul was freaking awesome. There were a ton of just really cool, crazy builds out there. We got to see so many old friends, man. It's always great to just see people. It was cool to have people just stop us in the hall and say that they like the videos we've been making. That's different. Historically, we've always done a magazine. So we just kind of get up to booths and we slap down our magazine and go, look at this badassery. And it was different this time because we've gotten a lot more out of our shells and put our faces out there. People actually recognized us, which was cool and strange all at the same time. But yeah, I think overall it was good. I'm glad that we went,
Yeah. Ben, what's your takeaway?
Well, this being the third year that I've been, I can definitely say just from like a photography perspective of the event, doing media there, the past 2 years, I guess through COVID, has been kind of like seemingly down. Like I remember the first year I went, you guys were like, man, this is not what it used to be, or this wasn't how things used to be. You used to have to stand and wait around to get a picture because there's 80 million people that's going to be walking around you on every little thing, no matter where you're at the show. And so for like the first 2 years that I went, so that would have been 21 and 22. I was like, no, that's not how it is. I could pretty much walk up to any booth and be like, oh, that's cool, click, that's cool, click, and go about my day. But this year was way different, especially on Friday, where they let the general public in as well. I would call that as close to a madhouse as I have seen the SEMA Show, which I guess would be like considered the old school vibes of the show. But it was really cool to see, like just the amount of people, and that kind of gave me hope for the automotive aftermarket future, seeing the amount of just sheer people, businesses, something like 2,000 vendors there at the show. And it's like 2.5 million square feet. So that's quite a bit of space for everybody to walk around in too. But, it was just like, I don't know. I feel like everybody, every company, every builder, just, as SEMA is traditionally, just brought out their best. It was really cool to see.
Yeah, I feel like Corona really screwed this thing up, man, because it's like it's trying to come back, but at the same time, people didn't go during the Corona years, and they kind of realized that maybe they didn't need to. So we're stuck in this purgatory thing. You know what I mean? Like the show, it's trying to come back. There were glimmers of kind of the old show, but then again, there was very obvious reminders that like it's not what it was. And I know you weren't there for that. And I will say, all right, so it's since you've been going, they've had the West Hall, which if you guys haven't been in a while, the West Hall is an entirely new building. I think it's only 3 years old. And it's massive. And they moved wheel and tires, or I'm sorry, they moved off-road into West Hall. So everything that was on the second floor, basically, of the wheel and tire hall is now in West Hall, plus some. And the West Hall is across the street. It's on the other side of Paradise, the big road that runs by the convention center. So what that does is it takes a whole ton of foot traffic out, and it makes it sometimes seem like there is less traffic in the big, old school main halls of SEMA. When that might not be true, it's just spread it out even more massive than it already was. Having said that, did you really notice Friday like an uptick in attendance? Because I didn't see it.
I maybe I was in the wrong spots, but I didn't see it. I expected to see it, because they were having the whole SEMA Fest thing over the weekend, and Friday was, I believe this is the first time ever that it was open to the public, right? And
Right.
every time I go to SEMA, all I hear from everybody is how everybody wants, oh my God, I've always wanted to go to SEMA. You would think this would be one of those opportunities where people would just absolutely take advantage of it, fly out to Vegas for a long weekend, do the SEMA Fest and the Friday thing, and really experience it. So I don't know, man. It didn't seem like there were a ton more people there to me. There should have been, but there.
Although again, devil's advocate, if you are not working, if you are there to enjoy the SEMA show and you're not working, you probably go straight to the Hoonigan Burn Yard. You know what I mean? Like you're going there to see the action, to get some of the free swag, to experience that side of it. So maybe, the area is all big enough to where we didn't cross paths as much as maybe we thought. Maybe the cost of entry was prohibitive to people. I don't know exactly what the cost is, but I know that to bundle it with a SEMA Fest pass, which if you guys don't know what the hell that is, don't feel bad because it was new. SEMA Fest is basically a music festival on, Friday night and then Saturday afternoon and evening. It included like X Games type shenanigans, some BMX stuff. The Formula D guys were out there, thrashing around and just overall excitement. But a music festival meets a car show. Grid Life can explain that.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. So I don't know. I like your glass half full thing, Ben. I like the fact that you saw that energy there. No, I'm serious because sometimes me and Mike have watched it fall off. Like let's be real. We're kind of watching what could be the death of the SEMA show, and that kind of cuts deep. And once you start to see the negativity, it's very easy to see more negativity. That's why I'm envious, and I welcome your comments because me and Mike left to our own devices, we'll convince each other that the whole damn world's caving in, when we go to SEMA. Having said that, I mean, let's talk about the reality, the big elephant in the room. The manufacturers are gone. Toyota's stepped up. Ford ended up doing the absolute bare minimum to hold their place, their seniority, so to speak. What other manufacturers were there?
GM was gone, Stellantis was gone, Honda didn't have their normal booth, Hyundai didn't have theirs. Was it Nissan there?
They were, yeah, Nissan was there.
Nissan was there. Most of them stepped out, man.
Yeah. Okay, so the manufacturers stepped out, and then we have the tires. A lot of tire companies are missing in action or had minimum effort booths.
Dude,
just kind of
weird booths. Like we went and saw Maxxis, and their booth was literally just a walled off square. Like it was just a little 20 by 20 building that you couldn't. It was all black. You couldn't see into it. And it was just weird. It was like a booth. They just threw a brick down, and that was it.
And for those of you guys listening, you got to understand the car manufacturers and the tire companies, like they got the money. You know what I mean? If anybody's got the money, like those guys are usually rolling in it, and they usually are the anchors of the SEMA show. It is what it is. Those are the guys that show out, that do it big, and they're the anchors. And they're falling out. And another thing that you need to know, if you're not too familiar with the SEMA show, there's a seniority system. So basically, if you're out 1 year, that's okay. If you're out 2 years, you lose all your seniority, and the seniority comes for when it's time to buy your booth space. The oldest seniority companies get to pick first. So that explains why we saw Ford doing kind of the bare minimum this year, because Ford always had what Toyota had this year. They had a giant prominent spot. They used to have a big spot outside as well. They pulled out completely last year. So this year they're like, oh, we got to do something. If we let it go this year, then we start back from zero, So I think we're seeing some of those companies kind of stay in it barely just to keep the seniority to feel things out. The problem is,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to get into kind of the next topic, and you can change it if you want. It used to take a lot of balls to not go to SEMA, because SEMA is the show. SEMA is the aftermarket protector, so to speak. Like the SEMA show is the show of the year, hands down. And if you didn't go to SEMA, the fear of missing out was like as big as it gets. But now we're in a stage where some companies have made that tough decision and stayed out of it. And for every other company, it becomes less courageous. You know what I'm saying? Like the first companies to go, that's it. We're not going to be able to do SEMA. Like that's a super bold move. That's the first domino. And then for all the other people, it becomes less bold. Once you see that Ford's out, once you see that GM's out, once you see that Honda's out, and all these tire companies and stuff like that are doing nothing at all or less, it becomes easier to go, this isn't where we need to be, because SEMA is expensive. I mean, to get a 20 by 20, I mean, I'm ballparking it here, but by the time you get your 20 by 20, you get your little hangy spinny sign, you get your carpet, you get your booth in there, you pay your staff to fly in, you put them up in a hotel and you feed them, you're at 50 plus grand. Easy. Oh, yeah. And that's for the run of the mill booths. You know what I mean? That is not for the tire and wheel company booths. So people are starting to wonder if the return's there. SEMA has changed its focus. This is not officially, this is just what people like me and Mike can see over the years, is it used to be a trade show, plain and simple. It was a trade show that was flashy as shit. You know, it was the best trade show there was. Well, now SEMA's trying to adapt to potentially the death of trade shows, which, by the way, the internet's coming for us all. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to take all the jobs, and it took print, you know, and it took a lot of things, and now it's coming after these trade shows. And maybe SEMA sees that writing on the wall, and maybe SEMA's trying to become their own brand separate from the show. Maybe they're trying to be a little bit too much of an influencer with things like SEMA Fest. But the fact of the matter is, dude, SEMA's where a lot of us, it's homecoming. You know what I mean? Like, it's where we see people that we haven't seen for a year or more. And I don't want to lose that. I'm sorry, I've been rambling. Does anybody have anything?
No, you're speaking facts. You're speaking the truth here. It's, you know, we talked to a lot of people at this show, and everybody was kind of saying the same thing. Everybody kept saying, you know, it's exactly what you're saying. SEMA seems to be on the way down right now, which is really sad to see. I don't want to see it. SEMA's the one that lobbies for us and our industry out there when it comes to the government, who seems to be bugging the shit out of us and trying to bother us and put restrictions on us every single day. So we need them. We need SEMA to be as strong as possible. A lot of people saying stuff along the lines of maybe check out PRI. But see, a strong industry will be able to do all of these things. But when you're getting pummeled by the government and restrictions and the EPA and the whole EV agenda is getting pushed down your throat, money gets scarce, people get scared, and they stop investing in big, extravagant things like this. At the end of the day, SEMA is supposed to be a place to go and do business and have an awesome experience in a fun town. And when business is bad, it's hard to do all of that stuff. So that's essentially what's happening here. And you can tell just by walking around that SEMA made some drastic decisions that they've never made before. I mean, if you just walk around, like, they used to take all the overseas, all the foreign vendors who were kind of knockoffs and just resellers, and they used to just put them in the very back hall, all the way at the very end. This time, a lot of those companies were prominently displayed up front in Wheel and Tire and in the central halls over there in Performance. I've never seen that before, but I guarantee SEMA was like, shit, this convention center is really expensive to rent out, and we need the money. So put those guys, I guess, where they want to be. And they had.
Plus, as people pull out, their seniority goes up, so they get to choose.
Exactly. Yep.
And there's other tricks. There's other tricks that I've noticed. You know, there's more space in the aisles than there used to be. They used to have to cramp it in more. There's more space between the entry and the first booth. There's more car displays. For example, this is an obvious one, but when Jeep pulled out Mopar last minute, they just filled it up with cars that were probably supposed to be outside, and they just moved them inside, because I noticed outside seemed a little lighter than normal. You know, they give Chip Foose a whole section. He didn't used to get that. You know, like that's a hookup. We saw a whole section in the back of Performance, which Performance was full, always full. We saw a whole section back there for art, you know, kind of over there where Honda used to be, if you guys know where that is. They're definitely filling in space, no doubt about it. But I guess to maybe give it to Ben, you know, the positive guy in the room, to balance everything out. Like, all right, so what do you think? Yeah. All right, you guys have to understand, like Mike kind of mentioned, I'll restate it. Me and Mike are like trying to talk to people, right? We got 4 days. In this case, we had 3 days to go through and see everybody that we haven't seen in a year, to talk to them, to get the vibe of what's going on in the industry. Of course, to try and maybe put together, or at least kind of like let them know we'd like their business next year, start trying to think about stuff that we can do. Like, that's what me and Mike are doing at SEMA. The cars, they're beautiful, but we kind of walk past them. I will take little notes as I'm walking by, things that are cool, but I don't stop and lust over the cars. I just don't have time to do it. Ben Battles takes a different approach, since he's like a true whatever media guy, you know, like a photographer, a video guy, like, and just an all around like car nut. You guys have probably never seen anybody get as excited about cars as Ben Battles and know as much about every damn car as Ben Battles. Just trivia. Like it's insane. So as a wide-eyed car loving dude, you know, without as much history under their belt to make them jaded, like what did you think of the builds? Like influencers, I will give it that. The cars have gotten just insane, specifically the imports. Because when I was first getting into this, the imports weren't there yet. It was still a new subculture. It was a lot of bolt-on performance and even custom performance, but we hadn't perfected the craft yet. We weren't going through these cars as if they're resto mods. You know, now they've crossed over and they're completely custom. Then they were pretty much wicked street cars, you know, and that's the difference. So like, what do you think of the quality of the builds? Maybe like which one stood out to you? And what do you think of like influencers and what influencers are kind of bringing to the table, good or bad?
So of course SEMA is going to bring out like the cream of the crop, best of the best. All the best builders from all over the world, not just US, come to this show to showcase their stuff. And this year, more than ever, the influencer crowd, especially the YouTuber crowd, was at an all-time high here at the show. Like I'll give you an example. TJ Hunt, he works with like Street Hunter, the wide body kit manufacturer, and last year he unveiled like a Toyota 86, and this year he had it was something crazy. Yeah, it was an M4 GT3 car, like just out of nowhere. That's a YouTuber build. That's not a millionaire's racecraft team coming up with this grand looking car. This is a YouTuber. Of course, he's doing much more than the YouTube thing now, and I do get that, but like literally watching him for the past 4 or 5 years grow into this is just kind of like, that's wild. So not only that, I think he also had outside a midnight purple R34 GTR, which I will say is like the R34s are like, I don't know, the most popular car of SEMA this year. I don't know if y'all noticed how many there were, but now that they're legal in the United States, they're everywhere. And it was like the build of choice for no matter who you were to have an R34 in your booth, which was, I mean, like, it's still cool. R34s are cool. In the scheme of imports, you know, there's a ton of that. But R34s specifically, there were a ton. But he had one of those sitting outside. It was like Nismo kitted out, $250,000 car easily. YouTuber build, $250,000 car. Like, you see, it's like it's getting ridiculous. And like looking at cars like that is kind of setting a standard for new people coming into like the influencer scene and being like, okay, I've got a $5,000 budget or a $10,000 budget to build this car. And then you see stuff like that. And it's like, and I don't even want to build that anymore because like this has already been done, you know. Like, I hate to get pessimistic right off the bat, but there you go. I mean, like, that's how a lot of people feel. It's intimidating to a certain extent. But then there's also people like I met a lot of really, really cool people that build these cars for real. This guy named Marv, he had a BMW wagon in the Toyota Tread Pass. He had built an 8 Series BMW last year. Like, he's all about BMWs. And it was at last year's SEMA show. And like, man, just seeing like the guy take so much care and be so knowledgeable with that car and the build and documenting every little thing, you know, that goes along with it. It's like, that's the kind of person I want to be talking with. Cause like, they're those enthusiasts that are not like, oh, I just had somebody else build it for me and they, you know, didn't have their hands in it or have any creative process involved. It's just like, I want it to be like this and have 20 other people build it for me. No, this guy was like involved with all of the process and like took pride in that, you know. And it's like there were more of those people there to outweigh the, oh yeah, just built for YouTube type stuff, right? You know, because you can build cars for content all day long, but at the end of the day, I want to see the people that truly take care of the cars and are knowledgeable. And within probably 2 minutes of meeting any of these people with these builds, you can tell who's who. You can tell who get their hands dirty and who sent, $100,000 somebody's way to, get it done or whatever, which was unique. And there's definitely more so of a shift in the builds this year. It started probably 2 years ago, but the whole EV and conversion stuff really just took straight off. In the back, they had a whole EV like hall in the back of Performance. So it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And now it's like 12 or 13 companies that just do full-time EV swaps, components, batteries, conversions, you name it. And getting big names involved, like Richard Rawlings, Gas Monkey Garage. That's a huge name in the automotive industry. And for him to have his name on a Ferrari Testarossa, of all things, with an EV swap, ruffled some feathers, right? I can only assume Ferrari is sending their cease and desist letters right now, right? But it's just kind of showcasing that shift in the industry. And it's weird. I know I wrote an article a couple years ago about like, oh yeah, this is gonna be so cool and great, and EV tech's gonna improve and blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, okay, I get that still, but like it's kind of scary how fast tech is advancing, and how like not just EV tech, but just tech for the automotive industry in general. I don't know if y'all saw the booth at the back of Performance, but in like the very back corner was like a 3D printer setup. Like they had all these different 3D printed parts for cars, like the Siesinger Z16. It's like this hypercar that is mostly 3D printed. And the fact that a company can just do that and use AI to manufacture a car based on like what it thinks is like, oh, this is going to be a good car. This is a great spec, great shape, great price, performance, all that. And it's just like, I'll design it. The computer is just like, I'll figure that out. And then you put it inside of this bed or a bath and it makes parts and then they fit perfectly. That's the tech that's scary to me. So like the industry is definitely like shooting off in all these different ways. And it's like hard to keep track of where it's going now. But I feel like SEMA has a good grasp of that, where it's like, okay, the people that are making the 3D printed parts, you go here. The people that are doing this performance stuff, you go here. EVs go here. So it's like, as long as you know your layout there, you can like pick and choose, and you can see like, okay, and then the next year, this booth's going to be bigger. And the next year, these guys are growing. You can kind of see like the shift happening in front of you. But anyway, it's cool. It's cool to see like all the different builds and stuff, from that aspect.
Yeah, I know there was a lot of people pissed with that EV corner. And SEMA's got a way of taking something that's organically growing and then highlighting it, right? They did it with Overland a few years ago. But before that, it was the import scene they were all up on, so like it does kind of change, whatever. I don't know. I mean, I don't like the EV shit, but if it's aftermarket, it deserves a place. It absolutely does. I would just make sure it's close to the ladies' room and that there's nothing heavy to lift, personally. But yeah, man, I don't know. You mentioned something about the YouTuber builds kind of ruining the fun. And that kind of struck me because for whatever it's worth, a YouTuber, like the primary motive for everything they do, whether they want to admit it or not, is likes. It has to be a like and subscription generating machine. And that by nature means that they have to keep outdoing each other. It has to get more absurd and more absurd and more absurd. And I guess that's kind of how car culture is, with or without YouTube. It's always kind of like that. But I think in the process of them it's kind of self-centered, trying to get more and more and more likes for their own channel, they end up alienating more and more and more people from car culture, not from watching it, but from actually feeling like they can get involved in it for some reason. And this conversation came up in a lot of meetings that me and Mike have. There seems to be a barrier. There is absolutely no denying that car culture is getting more views, more seconds watched than it ever has because of social media, because of YouTubers and influencers. Yet there is also no denying that car culture is dying in the young generation. They're not into it. We were all into it. You know what I mean? Like, and they're not into it in the same way that they were. For some reason, they can sit there and consume hours on end of car related content, but then not get a car that they can modify, not even get their license. It's like they're just not making the connection between watching it and then doing it. And I don't know exactly what the barriers are. I'm sure some of it's financial. Kids have a lot more expenses than they did 20 years ago. Everything costs a shit ton. But I think it's also the fact that these YouTubers are so well funded at this point, the big ones, that they're building such intangible, ridiculous shit. I mean, shit with twin Honda motors and Nissan, you know, like it's just off the charts absurd. Like absurd for any purpose other than stunting at SEMA. You know, like that's all it is. And I think that people, as it goes here, the people down at the ground level are like, I mean, that's cool, but I can't do it. Just like I look at a Formula One car and go, that's cool, but I don't feel the connection to try and buy one because it's not in the cards. I think that, you know, when it was a more grounded thing before the influencers that were being so well funded by big tech, it was much more inviting. Influencer wasn't a word. That was a cringy ass word for years that somehow we have just come to accept and use, and we shouldn't. It's no less cringy. It's just more normal. But I think back in the day, it was more about inspiring. It was people doing the shit that they loved and other people seeing how much they loved it and how rad it was and then wanting to get involved now. And these days it's literal. It's like I said, man, it's just a content generating machine.
Everything nowadays is a flex. Like these cars are literal living clickbait articles, you know, like it has to be the most ridiculous thing ever so that you can't help but look at it. And when at the end of the day, all they've really done is found the most convoluted way in the world to make 700 horsepower. Like, yes, it's very, very cool, but like, why? I still remember when I first got into cars, it was because of the way the car made you feel when you drove it. When you were just cruising around town with the windows down, your stereo up, and you're hanging out with your buddies, or when you're racing and learning and hanging out with the car guys. It was more about the experience. Now it's all about the flex, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But my car has 2 K-series motors in it, and the Z's. Why? Like I get it. You made a YouTube channel, and that is awesome. I respect the hell out of build. I couldn't make that if my freaking life depended on it. That is amazing. But why?
Yeah, there.
Point other than views.
Well, yeah, it's shares. It has to be so ridiculous that you have to share it with somebody. And usually it's not guys like us sharing it. It's 18-year-olds sharing it, that they're seeing something crazy for the first time, you know, and thinking something crazy's never been done before. Going back to what you were saying about the way a car made you feel, the way, you know, a Prelude with an intake and exhaust just and the sunroof open just made the day brighter. Like it was, and there was a mod path that was in front of you that was piece by piece that you're like, yeah, and then I'm going to get the clear taillights, and then I'm going to get the VTEC controller, and then I'm going to get my 5 Ziggin wheels, and then and it was like exciting to get to that next level or whatever. And now it's just like, well, fuck, man, it's only a Prelude. What's the point? You know, it's just like it totally, the YouTubers, I don't know if they intended, it's an unintended consequence, but they are fucking up the inspiration. Like, in a lot of cases, and not all of them are, you know. And to speak against that, we had the opportunity to go to a little car meet after the last day of SEMA, where a lot of them hot boy damn YouTubers from Southern California were at, apparently. I don't know, because I just watch 80s hair bands on YouTube. Yeah, it was a bunch of wide body everything exotics, wide body Ferraris, wide body Lamborghinis, turbos sticking out the back where the window in the back should be, and all this crazy ass shit, flames getting blown up at people's face, and I can't even begin to explain how mental the whole thing was, because it was ridiculous. It was not sanctioned. It was not like monitored by police until the end there. It was an absolute free for all that honestly, they just kind of let it go because it's SEMA week. But when you're there in person with these guys, I mean, shit, a lot of them do drive the cars. It's not like we're just like, no, they're just building it for YouTube. They're not driving it. No, they are. They're driving the damn wheels off the thing and they're beating on them like they're B16 Honda Civics, but they're exotics, and it's wild. And in person, it is damn inspiring. I mean, I left a little bit of a changed man after seeing that. You know what I mean? Like, it kind of motivated me. So the YouTube thing's a double-edged sword. But there's a difference between seeing it on the on the screen and seeing it in person. They gotta somehow. Oh God, I shouldn't even fucking say this because they're gonna do it. But they need to almost have a YouTuber tour, some sort of way to get these cars really out in front of people, running in the flesh, hear them, sit in them. Don't really do that because that'll be horribly cringy. And now SEMA's gonna try and put one together.
Yeah.
Anyway. But yeah, I'm trying to think of what else. I mean, that's SEMA in a nutshell, man. SEMA seems to be, it's kind of contradictory right now because there kind of is an energy going through it, but it's also kind of endangered, And we were talking to one friend that's been doing this. He's been at like 30 plus SEMAs, and he's like, when digital took over print, it happened fast. He said a show like SEMA doesn't die right away. Like it's gonna be kind of a long death if it's to die. God. I also heard a lot of people just off the record, so to speak, were kind of like, this was before SEMA, going into SEMA, we're like, this is our all right, we'll check it out one last year and see what happens. And then after this year, we can make a call. And I think that those guys, you might not like the call they're going to make next year. Now, who knows? We got 10 months, you know what I mean? Like, until you have to really start making calls, maybe 9 months. And SEMA has a way of, you end up going, yeah, we got to go. But yeah, it reels you in. It really does. And that's cool. And I'm glad we went, dude. And SEMA has so many good attributes besides the cars that are there, besides the connections you make. I mean, I know the three of us, especially me and Mike, we needed that. We came back a lot more focused and motivated than we went. This was our first year without print. Like, guys, I'll be real, that sucks. You know what I mean? Like, I've been going since 05 and 06 with the print magazine. I could walk up to a booth that had never heard of us in their lives confidently because I could throw a magazine down on their table and I know that they'd be like, oh, damn, this looks good. This is you guys? Like, it's a conversation starter. And so to go in there without that magazine, man, like, I was apprehensive. I really was. But it didn't go that way. Mike was talking about that today. Like, that was just, I was wasting a worry. Because, we got there and people were like, yo, I love what you guys are saying. I love the news that you guys are getting into now. I love the fact that you guys have the balls to say what a lot of manufacturers and a lot of people won't. Like, keep fighting that fight. So that part of it was awesome, man. And that's got us fully fully damn motivated to go forward. And that's one of those intangible values of SEMA. You know, I can't mark that down. It's just an attitude that you come back with. Like, I'm glad we went. It would have been easy to not go and to make one of 1,000 excuses, you know. And like I said, it's kind of a safe excuse now. We could have convinced ourselves, man, we don't need to be there. That show, it's falling apart, blah, you know, and we could have justified it. But we went and we're absolutely better off for it. And like Mike said, we do not want to see SEMA die. I will, if somebody from SEMA contacts me, I will spend hours of my week fighting for SEMA for free. Like I would do that because I love SEMA and wouldn't be here without them. And they're absolutely like the backbone of this whole aftermarket industry. Nobody wants to see it die. We're just getting a little frustrated with what they're doing sometimes. So I don't know, you know, it's kind of where it sits for me.
Yeah. Same with me, Ben. I will say I am jealous of the eyes that you see these cars and SEMA in general through. I used to see it that way, and I guess I'm just a jaded, mean old bastard now. So good for you, man. Seriously. I do miss actually admiring the builds, but I ain't got time for that shit anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you have Ben, who's just like stoked on PRI. He's already hit me up a couple times. Hey, we going? If we're going, we gotta go ahead and get that going.
Already looking else, like, yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, for real, man. I want to see it survive. I want to see the culture not bail on SEMA. It's going to be easy now for them to be like, man, it's expensive. I'm not seeing return on my investment. It's just turned into a car show. They're just letting random people in now. I can't do business. They're more focused on SEMA Fest, you know, and that whole shit. And that's all valid. It's going to be harder to continue to go, but I think that that's the right choice. I think what the industry needs now is unity more than anything. So although we might have our frustrations with certain parts of SEMA, I think that's all the more reason why we need to show some grace and be like, guys, if we all start bailing, nobody wins here. Is SEMA perfect? Hell no. And SEMA needs to hear that, you know, maybe they need to work with people a little bit more. They need to fight a little bit harder to be a trade show. I don't know. It feels like they need to fight harder with the politicians, but I know that can be an impossible ask at this particular time. So, I mean, again, nobody wants to see SEMA fail. And if you do, ask yourself, are you just trying to watch a train wreck, or do you really want to see that fail? Because I think what we need to do is kind of unite, show grace. I mean, essentially they represent all of us, so it's kind of all of us to try and pull it together and save the damn show, right? Because what happens without it? We have a freaking digital Zoom SEMA, or even worse, nothing at all. Like, that's not it.
I've done a digital trade show before, and it was a well done digital trade show, and it still sucked ass. It's not an experience. It's just work behind a computer. It's not good. It's not a good way to do business.
No, you can't. Car culture cannot be digital. Mm-mm. You can have car culture on social media, you know what I mean? But like, you can't live it. Like, what the hell is the point? It's got to be in person. You got to touch it, see it, feel it, hear it, smell it, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, anybody else got any words of wisdom, encouragement, piss offery, anything like that?
No, we didn't get into our normal shenanigans this time around. We're pretty well behaved.
On this podcast or at SEMA?
At SEMA. I feel like every year we're always kind of trying to chase the dragon to remake the magic we did from the first couple of years we were there. And we finally realized that it's impossible. So we're just not gonna try anymore.
Yeah, it just hurts real bad. but we've
too old.
had some wild ones. And that's the thing. I want SEMA to stick around so that little dudes in their 20s now can have that same wild times that we used to have. Because it does, man. It makes enthusiasts and careers for life. You know what I mean? After some of those SEMAs, we're like, oh, we're in. We are never, ever giving this up, no matter what. Like, so, all right. Well, I guess that's it, guys. As always, please get our free S3 Magazine app because it's free and it helps us out. Be sure to check out Ben Battles and all of his digital platforms. He's like killing it on those things. Ben, you got different names on each one, don't you? What are the names?
I actually just literally changed everything over to Battles Digital. Everywhere you go, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Battles Digital, that's me.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening this far, and we'll see you soon.
It's not herpes.